For years, hundreds of bones at an Indian mountain lake were blamed on one ancient disaster. Then, DNA revealed unrelated groups who reached it roughly 1,000 years apart. The famous solution had explained a disaster that never happened. This is Roopkund, the lake where ancient DNA did not solve the mystery. It split one neat story into several stranger ones. Roopkund sits about 5,029 meters above sea level in the Indian Himalayas. The lake is only about 40 meters across and remains frozen through much of the year. When snow retreats, bones appear in the shallows and across the surrounding slope. Early expeditions estimated that 600 to 800 people might be represented. That number is not a forensic count. No controlled excavation ever mapped every body, and the original arrangement of the remains is gone. Rock slides, avalanches, and seasonal water movement shifted the bones. Pilgrims and hikers also rearranged, collected, or removed remains and artifacts. The remains entered the modern administrative and scientific record during the 1940s. Government sources commonly credit Forest Ranger H.K. Madwall with recording them in 1942. The bones inspired explanations ranging from traders and soldiers to epidemic victims. But one story gradually pushed the others aside. Local tradition tells of a royal party that offended the goddess Nanda Devi. A storm of enormous hail then destroyed the travelers on the mountain. Roopkund lies near the route associated with the Nanda Devi Rajjat pilgrimage. Nearby inscriptions suggest older ritual activity, although reliable descriptions of the pilgrimage appear much later. The legend was culturally powerful, but it was not a dated eyewitness account. Science still needed to connect the bones, the injuries, and the timeline. The first radiocarbon results seemed to do exactly that. 5 early samples produced calibrated dates between roughly 684 and 995 CE. Those dates encouraged one sweeping conclusion. The lake held a 9th century group that died together. The small first batch appeared to speak for hundreds of untested bones. A major expedition in 2003 and 2004 brought Indian anthropologists, geneticists, geologists, porters, and local guides back to the lake. Reports described men, women, and children rather than an obvious army. There was no convincing cache of weapons, armor, trade cargo, or pack animal remains. Preliminary DNA reporting suggested South Asian affinities. Skull examination also revealed rounded compression injuries that looked consistent with heavy objects striking from above. The emerging reconstruction was irresistible. South Asian pilgrims and porters had crossed the mountain together, only to be trapped in a lethal hailstorm. The researchers themselves warned that the early DNA conclusions were preliminary, yet caution disappeared as the story moved through documentaries, articles, and solved mystery headlines. By 2013, reports claimed the case was settled. Cricket ball-sized hail had supposedly killed an entire 9th century party almost simultaneously. But the solution rested on a dangerous assumption that the first dated bones represented the whole lake. In a genetics laboratory, that assumption was about to collapse. The central question had changed. Was Roopkund really one catastrophe, or had everyone been reading a mixed archaeological site as a single event? The decisive investigation analyzed 76 skeletal samples. Researchers recovered genome-wide data from 38 individuals, mitochondrial results from 71, and stable isotope measurements from 45. 37 individuals received direct radiocarbon dates. This mattered because DNA could reveal biological relationships, while radiocarbon could show whether those people even lived in the same century. On 20 August 2019, The results appeared in Nature Communications. The first genome-wide study of Roopkund divided the tested dead into 3 distinct ancestry groups. The largest cluster, called Roopkund A, contained 23 people. Their ancestry fell within the broad range of present-day South Asian genetic variation. They were not one genetically uniform tribe. The group was heterogeneous, and the researchers found no pairs related at the 3rd degree or closer among all 38 genomes. Their dates reached from the 7th through the 10th centuries CE. Even within this early group, 2 calibrated intervals did not overlap. One tested person dated to approximately 675 through 769 CE. Another dated to roughly 894 through 985 CE, suggesting that even the early remains may record multiple incidents. That alone damaged the one-day catastrophe. Then the second group turned a correction into a historical shock. Roopkund B contained 14 people whose ancestry was most closely related to Eastern Mediterranean populations in the comparison data, especially present-day Greek and Cretan groups. These people were not 9th century companions of Roopkund A. Radiocarbon placed them in the 17th through 20th centuries, roughly a millennium later. A third cluster contained one person with Southeast Asian-related ancestry. That individual belonged to the later chronological phase overlapping the Eastern Mediterranean-related group. The later radiocarbon intervals overlapped, so the B and C individuals may have died in one event. But the dating range cannot reduce that possibility to one proven year. The result was not a reversal inside the DNA. It was a reversal of interpretation. One supposed 9th century tragedy became at least 2 major deposition phases. The discovery created an irresistible new label: Greek travelers at Skeleton Lake. But the genetics never issued passports. Similarity to modern Greek and Cretan reference groups does not prove Greek nationality or birth on Crete. It describes statistical genetic affinity, not language, religion, or identity. The same limit applies to the Southeast Asian-related individual. One genome proves that one sampled person carried that ancestry signal, not that a Southeast Asian migration reached the lake. The sample proportions also cannot be projected across all estimated remains. 38 genomes demonstrate diversity, but they do not tell us how many of the lake's hundreds belonged to each group. Researchers recovered 23 genetic males and 15 genetic females. That balance, combined with the absence of military equipment, further weakens the idea that the entire site was an army. Stable isotopes added an independent clue. The South Asian-related group had varied diets, involving both C3 and C4 food sources, with millet among the possibilities. The later B and C individuals showed a more consistent terrestrial C3 dietary pattern. Foods such as wheat, barley, or rice could produce it in many regions. That dietary contrast supports different life histories. It cannot prove where the later group ate before traveling, because similar crops existed far beyond the Eastern Mediterranean. The later travelers still had to reach a remote Himalayan lake. An Eastern Mediterranean-related party moves through violent snow, but no surviving record explains why they came. There is no confirmed travel diary, local account, or Eastern Mediterranean artifact assemblage tied to them. Their itinerary remains the most startling open question created by the study. So, who brought the later group to Roopkund, and what happened when they arrived? The bones can narrow the possibilities without naming the journey. The hailstorm theory also survived, but in a much smaller form. Physical assessment found 3 people with unhealed compression fractures that occurred at or near death. Heavy hail could cause rounded, blunt force injuries, and severe hail occurs in the region. The fractures, therefore, remain compatible with a violent storm. But many other cracks likely formed after death as defleshed bones moved through rock slides, landslides, and seasonal ice. Damage is not automatically a death certificate. Hail may explain some deaths in one episode. It cannot explain people arriving from different ancestry groups across centuries and dying roughly a millennium apart. Researchers also screened their sequence data for bacterial pathogens. They found no convincing signal that could explain a mass death by epidemic. That negative result weakens a simple epidemic theory, but does not exclude every infection. Pathogen DNA can degrade, disappear, or remain below detection limits. A 2024 trace element study of 15 bone samples found a pattern consistent with substantial plant consumption. Its author called the result preliminary and requested larger isotope studies. It did not date the samples, identify the people, or reanalyze their genomes. The 2019 division into multiple groups remained intact. Then, a 2025 Kashmir study opened another possibility. A medieval maternal lineage from Burzahom joined the same broad phylogenetic clade as a published medieval Roopkund sample. The medieval Kashmir sample, MED1, carried mitochondrial haplogroup M30. The comparable Roopkund lineage belonged to the earlier South Asian-related phase, not the later Mediterranean-related group. The authors called the connection inconclusive and asked for more samples. It is not a family identification or a proven route from Kashmir to Roopkund. At most, it makes regional movement involving part of the early South Asian phase more worth investigating. It says nothing about how the later Eastern Mediterranean-related travelers arrived. Other recent Himalayan genome studies confirm centuries of migration and admixture across the region. They did not test Roopkund remains and cannot identify anyone at the lake. A 2025 consumer genetics comparison also found distant connections between some Roopkund individuals and modern participants. Many links involving Group B pointed towards southeastern Europe. Most reported segments were short and suggested distant shared ancestors. The project broadly echoed the Eastern Mediterranean signal without identifying the dead or their descendants. Meanwhile, Roopkund itself is changing. Forest officials reported shrinkage and silting linked to changing precipitation and moraine entering the lake. The site still lacks what it needed from the beginning: a systematic, ethically approved excavation connecting individual bones, artifacts, locations, dates, and genomes. Without that context, researchers cannot establish the true number of people, reconstruct body positions, or determine how many separate events the early group represents. The 2019 study established what Roopkund was not. It was not one family, one army, or one 9th century catastrophe containing every skeleton. It strongly supports at least 3 sampled ancestry groups and at least 2 major phases separated by roughly a millennium. The earlier phase may contain several events of its own. The DNA did not reveal names, passports, or causes of death. It showed that earlier evidence had been asked to carry far more certainty than the samples could support. That is the real DNA reversal. Science replaced one complete answer with a narrower set of facts and several harder questions. The old mystery asked what killed one group at Roopkund. The evidence now asks who made several journeys there across 1,000 years and why none returned. Which possibility best explains the later Eastern Mediterranean-related travelers reaching Roopkund?